You might take a quick look at this shirt and think nothing of it. Graphics on shirts are pretty commonplace these days. Text and images are combined in a variety of shapes and colors to create that unique or sometimes comical message that distinguishes all of our clothing. But how did that image get there? What did the designer and production personnel have to do to transfer that image that started out as an idea in someone's head to the ink on that shirt? In the following segments, we're going to show you how that process all comes together. Many conceptual designs that end up on t-shirts have to be created using some sort of drawing program like Adobe Illustrator or Corel Draw. Creating graphics in these programs allows the designer to size and resize the image without causing a loss of quality to the image. We often call these graphics vector images. These graphics, unlike photographs, react more like objects with filled-in areas of color surrounded by points in space, called nodes. Think of vector graphics as rubber bands. You can stretch and shape them any way you need them to go, but they always return to the same shape and size that they started out as. It's important to note that when you design these kinds of graphics for screen printing, we actually need to use spot colors or channels. Many conventional printing processes use the combination of cyan, yellow, magenta, and black ink to recreate color, but to do so for a shirt would be difficult and expensive. In this case, we will open the Pantone color palette to select the two colors that we will use to print our design. Once they have been implemented, we have a design ready for output. To create our screens, we actually need to use a light-sensitive process. In order to transfer our digital images, we need to place them on a transparency to create what we call separations. These separations will be used to create our stencil that will help transfer the images to the shirt. To set up the transparency, make sure that you turn on your registration marks in your print dialog and set up your printout to come out as separations. When you print out your document, the design will actually come out in solid black and in the corresponding number of colors that you use in your design. This design is now ready to be transferred to a screen. Many screens need to be prepared with a light-sensitive material called emulsion. There are several types of emulsion, each with different colors and intended uses. The emulsion that we will coat our screens with is a photopolymer. To coat the screens, we pour the emulsion into a scoop coater. This coater will be used to apply the liquid to the screen. Our screen will be held in position by a screen clamp that is especially helpful in holding the screen in place. Use the coater to evenly spread the liquid emulsion on the screen and repeat for the other side. The number of passes depends on the emulsion being used and on the intended product to be printed on. When finished, the screen will need to be placed in a dryer to allow the emulsion to dry. The emulsion we used is water soluble before being exposed to ultraviolet light. Thus, if we wash the emulsion at this point, all of the emulsion will come right out. However, if we expose the screen to ultraviolet light and then try to wash the emulsion, none of the emulsion will wash out. This is where our transparencies come into play. Taking a ruler and pencil, we will mark the positions for our transparency and tape it into position. For multiple colors, this will need to be the exact same measurement on the other screen. This side of the screen will be exposed to an ultraviolet light source at this point. The black on the transparencies blocks the areas that do not receive ultraviolet light. The rest of the screen will be exposed to ultraviolet light. Our result when it is washed out is that our image on the transparency is open mesh, but the rest of the emulsion will be hardened. We place the screen with the transparency on our exposure table. This table allows for us to hold the screen in transparency and close contact so that we have a good exposure. We lift the table so that our light source is exposed to the exposure unit. We dial in the appropriate time and intensity and allow the UV light to do all the work. After the exposure is completed, we remove the transparency and wash out the image area with a little bit of warm water. The screen is then placed in the dryer to fully dry. Once our screens have fully dried, we are ready to load them on the printing press and begin the process of registering or lining up our screens for print production. In this case, our image that will be printed on our shirt is a 2-color left chest design. We begin the registration process by lining up one of our separations on a board that will hold our shirt in place. We do our best to measure out the exact position by loading our shirt and marking relevant points such as the top of the collar. This will assist us later on in production. Once our separation is properly registered on the board, we can then begin to line up the screen with the separation on the board. The registration marks that were printed on the separation have also been transferred to our screen. The name of the game here is to line up the registration marks on the separation taped to the board with the separation marks on the screen. It may be necessary to adjust the position of the board to get the marks in general position. After it is in general position, you will use the micro registration to ensure the image is lined up properly. You will need to repeat this process for each subsequent color. At this point, we are almost ready to do a test print. Before we do, we need to mask off the screen. We place the tape around the boundaries on the top side of the screen in case we get a little messy during our print. In our image area, we taped off the registration marks and any pinholes that might have popped up in the bottom side of the screen. This will ensure that any unwanted information does not get printed onto our shirt. An important part of ensuring that your print comes out at the highest quality deals with the selection of your squeegee. Squeegees come in a variety of configurations and characteristics. You should consider the kind of ink and fabric that you will be printing when selecting your squeegee. In this case, we will be printing with plastisol ink suited for printing on textiles. We are now ready to do a test print of our image. The colors of ink that we will print will be spread on their designated screens. After the inks are spread, we grasp a squeegee and drag the ink across the image area with light pressure. This is called flooding. Once the image has been flooded, we lock the screen down in position and grasp the squeegee and apply a bit more pressure to force the ink through the open mesh and onto the substrate. We lift the screen to check our quality. At this point, we still need to print one more color. We do not, however, want the wet ink to transfer from the shirt onto our other screen. In this case, we will move it under our flash curing unit. The unit uses heat to dry the ink so that we can print our next color. Once the ink is dried, we rotate the board and next screen into position and repeat our printing technique. We can then remove our test square from the board and run it through our belt dryer for final curing. A typical production press will work like this. All of the boards have been aligned in the proper position. The shirts have been loaded on the board, and one color at a time is printed. As each color is printed, the press is rotated and the ink is dried on the newly printed shirt with the flash curing unit. Meanwhile, the next shirt is printed to allow for continuous production. Once all of the shirts are printed, they are removed from the press and sent to the dryer for final curing. Your new shirt is now completed and ready to be worn. Now that wasn't so hard, was it? As you can see, the screen printing process is versatile, fun, and easy to do. Hopefully what you've seen here has been informative and helps get you started in making some great looking t-shirts. Good luck. You might take a quick look at this shirt and think nothing of it. Graphics on shirts are pretty commonplace these days. Text and images are combined in a variety of shapes and colors to create that unique or sometimes comical message that distinguishes all of our clothing. But how did that image get there? What did the designer and production person